Every once in a while, a player comes along who changes an entire sport almost overnight. That is exactly what happened to the WNBA this season. One rookie entered the league and accomplished in a single year what the league had been working toward for nearly 2 decades. Her name is Caitlin Clark, and after finishing her first professional season with the Indiana Fever, the conversation around women's basketball completely shifted. With her now stepping away during the off-season, ratings have already started to cool down, casual fans are tuning out, and the league suddenly finds itself facing questions nobody expected a year ago. So the real story is not just about highlights or statistics. It is about how one player transformed the entire direction of a professional sports league. Before Caitlin Clark ever played a WNBA game, the league was already experiencing noticeable momentum. Television ratings had climbed significantly from one season to the next, executives were celebrating growth, sponsors were beginning to pay attention again, and media outlets were finally discussing the WNBA as a rising product in mainstream sports culture. For the first time in years, the league looked like it was finally breaking through into a larger audience. Then Clark arrived, and suddenly those earlier numbers looked small compared to what happened next. In her rookie season, WNBA viewership exploded at a level nobody could have predicted. National broadcasts shattered expectations, games featuring the Indiana Fever became some of the most watched in league history, and millions of viewers tuned in specifically to watch Clark play. What makes the growth even more shocking is how quickly it happened. Analysts believe the league would have needed several more years of steady improvement to reach the audience levels Clark generated almost instantly. As a 22-year-old rookie still adjusting to the professional game, she accelerated the league's growth timeline in a way that felt almost impossible. It was not simply popularity. It was transformation on a historic scale. The same pattern appeared everywhere else. Ticket sales surged across the league as arenas that once struggled to fill seats suddenly sold out night after night. Several franchises moved games into larger NBA venues just to handle the demand whenever Clark came to town. Merchandise sales skyrocketed, sponsors rushed to get involved, and television networks reorganized schedules around Fever games because audiences consistently followed her. Entire markets experienced record-breaking attendance numbers, and road games often felt more like Indiana Fever home crowds because so many fans traveled specifically to see Clark in person. What separated Caitlin Clark from most athletes was not only her talent, but the cultural movement surrounding her. You could feel it outside the arena's hours before tip-off. Parking lots filled early, fans wrapped around buildings waiting to enter, and children carried homemade signs hoping for a single interaction. Many people watching her had never followed women's basketball before. Suddenly they knew her logo-range shooting ability, her passing highlights, and every viral clip circulating online. Across cities like Indianapolis, Phoenix, Chicago, Las Vegas, and Brooklyn, Fever games became major events rather than ordinary regular season matchups. The atmosphere reached another level whenever Indiana played on the road. In Washington, the crowd looked overwhelmingly dominated by Fever jerseys, and the noise whenever Clark touched the basketball nearly erased the home court advantage entirely. Similar scenes unfolded throughout the season as fans packed arenas across the country just for the opportunity to witness her play live. That kind of pull rarely happens in sports, regardless of gender or league. It becomes more than a basketball story. It becomes a cultural phenomenon. Because of that impact, comparisons started appearing almost immediately. Analysts and former players began mentioning Clark alongside names like LeBron James and Stephen Curry when discussing influence on the sport. First, those comparisons sounded exaggerated, but the numbers made them harder to dismiss. The difference, however, is that LeBron and Curry entered an already established NBA with global popularity, massive television deals, and decades of cultural dominance. Caitlin Clark entered a league that had spent years fighting for mainstream attention, stronger ratings, and consistent national coverage. That is what makes her rookie season feel so unprecedented. She did not simply become a star player. She altered the visibility, business potential, and cultural relevance of an entire league in less than a year. Whether people support the hype or criticize it, the numbers surrounding her impact are impossible to ignore. The biggest question now is whether the WNBA can maintain that momentum moving forward, because for one unforgettable season, Caitlin Clark became the center of the basketball world in a way very few athletes ever do. What made Caitlin Clark's impact even more incredible was that she elevated the WNBA faster than anyone thought possible. In just one season, she pushed the league further into mainstream culture than years of marketing campaigns and slow growth had managed to accomplish combined. But the rise of that attention also brought a complicated side that quickly became impossible to ignore. Along with the fame came an overwhelming level of pressure that very few rookies in sports history have ever experienced. Clark dealt with nonstop criticism, hateful comments online, and an environment where every interview, every reaction, and every expression became national conversation material within minutes. Media debates followed her constantly. Hard fouls during games sparked controversy, and some veteran players openly minimized her influence despite the numbers speaking for themselves. Certain analysts appeared frustrated by how much attention she commanded, almost as if the spotlight surrounding her had become too large for the league itself to control. Through all of it, she continued to perform. She showed up every night, carried enormous expectations on her shoulders, and never publicly complained about the chaos surrounding her rookie season. While debates raged around her, the league continued benefiting from the ratings, sold-out arenas, sponsorships, and national attention she generated every time she stepped onto the court. Yet despite all of that, parts of the basketball world still treated her like she needed to prove she belonged. When the Indiana Fever reached the playoffs, expectations immediately became unrealistic. The team was still rebuilding, the roster was young, and the coaching staff was trying to establish chemistry on the fly. On top of that, Clark entered the postseason carrying the heaviest spotlight women's basketball has ever placed on a rookie player. Their matchup against the Connecticut Sun exposed just how difficult that challenge truly was. Connecticut entered the series with years of playoff experience, physical defense, and the confidence of a veteran contender. From the opening moments, they pressured Indiana relentlessly and forced the Fever into uncomfortable situations offensively. It was exactly the type of matchup that could overwhelm a young team still learning how to win together. Even in those circumstances, Clark delivered one of the strongest performances of her rookie season. She attacked aggressively, hit deep three-pointers, created opportunities for teammates with elite-level passing, and battled through non-stop defensive pressure until the final buzzer. Despite her effort, basketball remains a team sport. Indiana struggled with consistency throughout the series, especially outside of Clark's production. Defensive breakdowns gave Connecticut easy scoring opportunities, and the Suns' experience allowed them to exploit nearly every weakness the Fever showed. Officiating also became a major discussion point during the series. Several calls against Clark frustrated fans and analysts alike, while physical contact that might normally draw whistles often went ignored. Many viewers felt her rhythm was repeatedly disrupted during critical stretches of the games. None of that changes the final outcome. Connecticut was the more complete and experienced team across the series. But it added another chapter to the ongoing conversations surrounding Clark's treatment throughout the season. Fairly or unfairly, she became the center of nearly every controversy connected to the league. By the end of the year, the exhaustion was clearly visible. Clark had gone directly from a demanding final season at Iowa, through a heartbreaking NCAA tournament run, into the WNBA season with almost no meaningful rest in between. She carried one of the heaviest game loads in basketball while simultaneously becoming the most discussed athlete in women's sports. The physical and mental pressure surrounding her rookie year would have been difficult for even established superstars to handle. Yet even while visibly exhausted during the playoff series, she still looked like the best player on the floor for long stretches. That reality says everything about her competitiveness and talent level. Most rookies struggle simply to survive under playoff pressure. Clark carried the expectations of an entire league while trying to lead a rebuilding franchise against veteran contenders. Once Indiana was eliminated, the WNBA faced a reality that many people around the sport had quietly worried about all season. A massive portion of the audience tuning into games was there specifically for Caitlin Clark, not necessarily for the league as a whole. The difference became obvious almost immediately after the Fever's playoff exit. Television projections for later postseason games dropped sharply without her presence, and the contrast in ratings between Clark's games and other playoff matchups became impossible to overlook. Some Fever games drew audiences approaching 2 million viewers, while other postseason contests struggled to reach even a fraction of those numbers. That gap revealed just how heavily the league's popularity surge was connected to one player. More importantly, it happened during football season when the NFL and college football dominate sports television in America. For a women's basketball player to attract that level of national attention against football competition was something the sport had never seen before. That is why Caitlin Clark's rookie season felt bigger than basketball itself. She was not just producing highlights or statistics. She became the central figure in one of the most dramatic cultural shifts women's sports has experienced in decades, and the effects of that transformation are still unfolding in real time. What makes this entire situation so fascinating is how quickly the league's momentum appears to shift whenever Caitlin Clark is no longer on the court. Her absence immediately raised questions about whether the WNBA can maintain the same energy, ratings, and cultural attention without the player who became the center of the basketball world during her rookie season. That reality says as much about the league's current structure as it does about Clark's influence. Of course, some fans will continue watching throughout the playoffs regardless of who is playing. Teams like the New York Liberty and the Las Vegas Aces still feature elite talent, established stars, and loyal fan bases built over years of success. Dedicated basketball fans genuinely love the sport itself and will continue supporting the postseason no matter what happens. But the larger concern centers around the millions of casual viewers who tuned in specifically because of Clark. For many of those fans, this was their first real exposure to the WNBA. Families built their evenings around watching Indiana Fever games. Casual sports viewers who had never followed women's basketball suddenly knew Clark's highlights, celebrated her deep shooting range, and followed every national storyline surrounding her season. Once Indiana was eliminated, social media quickly filled with people openly admitting they planned to stop watching until she returned next year. Some viewers even announced they had little interest in the remaining playoff matchups without her involved. That creates a difficult reality for the WNBA moving forward. The league now has to navigate an entire postseason and off-season without the player who became its biggest cannot avoid anymore. When one athlete can increase viewership multiple times over by herself, it reveals how heavily spent years building the sport and helping it grow into what it is today. Stability. The league's future depends on whether it can turn this moment into something sustainable that lasts beyond one superstar player. Another major factor is the long break ahead. By the time Clark returns for another meaningful professional game, nearly 200 days will have passed. She's participate in off-season leagues or join exhibition tournaments during her time away from the court. Instead, she chose to rest completely after one of the most exhausting stretches any young athlete has faced in recent memory. When you look at everything she carried over, moved directly from an intense college season at Iowa into a full professionally about protecting her health, longevity, and future career. Generational athletes rarely survive long-term without proper recovery, especially after carrying the emotional and physical maybe next stretch for the WNBA itself. Without her presence, many expect attendance and television numbers to decline noticeably during the off-season period. The non-stop social media conversations surrounding women's basketball are likely to quiet down, national attention may shift elsewhere, and the casual audience that discovered a few months ago. The situation has also reignited conversations about how parts of the basketball world responded to Clark's rise from the beginning. Throughout the season's attention she received. Instead of fully embracing the momentum she generated, portions of the conversation focused on minimizing her impact or framing her success as exaggerated hype. Return with her. Arenas will sell out again, television audiences reignite around her performances. That is what truly transformative athletes do in every era of sports history. Players like LeBron James and Stephen Curry change the direction of shift for women's basketball right now.